Well, thank you for joining us. Happy Friday to you. I'm Marlon Bowling with you, your tour guide to the ag commodities. It's a short trading week, but we're at the end of it already. And we actually today got the weekly export sales data out from USDA that normally comes out on Thursday, but because it was a holiday on Tuesday, that means everything is shoved back. So anyway, same old song and dance. So here we go with the weekly export sales numbers that came out just a little bit ago. Let's take a look here, shall we? On the corn, we had a total this week of 669,700 tons. That old crop portion of that was 79% higher than what we had last week. That was a fairly big jump. And it also includes net sales for the new crop of 418,000 tons in that total. So pretty decent sales, I guess, for the corn. Now, soybeans came in at 780,600 tons. I was a little bit surprised by that. Now, the old crop portion of it was down 17% to 187,800 tons. However, for next year, for the new crop, we had sales of 592,800 tons, and about half of that was sold to China. And Mexico also bought 127,000 tons of new crop, along with, 55,000 tons of soybeans sold to Mexico of the old crop. Now, on the wheat, we had 402,800 tons this time around, and we really don't think that was too bad of a number, all things considered, although it is harvest time here. Now, we also had numbers for grain sorghum and cotton and rice. And on the grain sorghum, we had 123,600 tons this week. The cotton, 239,600 running bales, and the rice, 73,200 tons. So all in all, the number's not too bad this time around compared to what we had last week in most cases. Then we had an overnight export sale. It just came across the wire. And that was a bit of a surprise. We had 180,000 tons of corn sold to Mexico overnight. Well, it'd be nice if it's priming the pump for more of these in the future. We have Brian Hoops on the line with us here this morning. And Brian, thank you for joining us. He is with Midwest Market Solutions. So what do you think of the numbers overall as they came in this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Marlon. It's an uptick from last week. It's an encouraging sign that after corn values dropped in the last week, that we're starting to see a little bit of export business pick back up. A lot of the sales, the private export sale announcement we saw this morning, the weekly sales this morning, vast majority of that is for the new crop category, and that's basically a hedge for Mexico and China and some of these other countries. As we go through our growing season to make sure that they have enough inventory for secured at price levels that they can afford. Now, our old crop sales are slowing, and they will continue to slow, especially as the safrinha corn crop has been harvested. So we kind of ignore that and figure that the USDA has some minor adjustments to make in next week's supply and demand report, and then in the August report, and kind of wrap up that marketing season. But most of the focus is on new crop sales, especially for the wheat market. We're going into our harvest time frame. And that's when exports usually and should pick up for our winter wheat. These, wheat is more of a food grade instead of a feed grade like corn is. And so foreign countries will normally step in and buy freshly harvested wheat, especially if it's a higher quality. And we have not seen that really transpire into our sales. Today's sales were an improvement, but these are not great numbers by any stretch of the imagination, and really doesn't change the overall long-term perception that U.S. wheat is about the fourth or fifth point of origin for the world's needs. We have many other countries that are stepping in at cheaper prices with high-quality wheat, and the U.S. just is not price competitive.
So the marketing year for corn and soybeans, just to be clear, that ends at the end of August, correct?
Yes, right at the first part of September. So the USDA has couple reports to make adjustments, several weeks until we kind of wrap up this marketing season. But the sales will dwindle, they'll slow down. Not going to be any type of real surprises, I don't think, going forward in here, either from the USDA or from our private sources that tell us that we get some export business. This morning's export sales, 45,000 metric tons sold for the old crop variety, and the rest sold for that new crop marketing season.
Well, let's take a look at our current prices then as they ended up overnight, shall we, on the Globex. We had September corn finishing 3 cents lower at 4.96, and December was down 3 3/4 at 5.02 3/4 in that overnight trade. On the soybeans, well, they actually hit a little pressure too. August down 8 1/4 at 14.40. You had November down 7 3/4 at 13.31 3/4. Kind of a quiet evening, but just a little softer. And then you had the wheat in Chicago. September was down 10.5 cents at 6.47 1/2. It was about 4 cents from its low of the overnight trade. Kansas City wheat, you had September down 17.5 at 8.26 1/4. Man, that thing has been really jumpy this week. And in Minneapolis, you had September wheat dropping 9 cents at 8.49 this morning. Well, we'll be back and we'll talk more with Brian Hoops. We'll sort out the latest beef and pork export numbers and what that means for the trade when we come back. Well, we're back with you, and we're talking with Brian Hoops about our weekly export sales data that just came out here this morning. We covered the grain side. Let's take a look at the meat sales that we had last week, the beef and the pork. Well, on the beef side, it looks like overall we sold 17,000 tons of U.S. beef last week. Believe it or not, that was up 41% from the week before, and it was 33% higher than our 4-week average. Now, we had the key buyers being Japan. They came in for 5,100 tons of U.S. beef last week. South Korea picked up 3,700 tons. Taiwan, 2,200. Canada actually bought 2,100 tons. And we had Mexico in there for just 1,500 tons of U.S. beef last week. No mention of China. Now, on the pork side, we had 26,000 tons sold last week. That was down about 3% from what we had the week before, just a small drop. And it looks like Mexico actually picked up 15,100 tons of pork last week. And we had Canada in there for, about 4,600 tons. And Japan, 1,700 tons. Australia, 900. South Korea. And I don't see China mentioned in the pork sales last week. What, no meat for China at all last week, Brian?
Yeah, it's interesting that China showed up as buyers of U.S. corn and soybeans last week, but they were pretty much absent for pork and beef. The big buyers were Mexico, Canada, and Japan, and China just largely out of the market here for beef and pork. And so a little surprising, and it certainly hurts our export business. You can tell when China pulls back out of the market, our sales dip maybe back to more of these normal levels that we've seen for both the beef and the pork. It's really, if we're going to see outstanding sales, we need to have China step in as a buyer, and they've been largely absent over the last several weeks.
Well, let's take a look at how we finished up yesterday on the big board. Our quotes are from Bar Chart. On live cattle, we wrapped up yesterday's trade with the August at 174.57. That was down 37 cents at the time. The biggest drop occurred in the December contract. On the feeders yesterday, well, it was another dismal day. You had August down 2.42, and it closed at 2.42.27. We had the September down $2.82. So a couple of days of bad downward movement in the feeder cattle market there. They had a sharp drop. Lean hogs were mixed, and you had August closing 32 lower yesterday at 97.12. However, you go beyond that and everything was higher. October actually was up $1.15 yesterday at 81.70. So we'll see what they want to do today to wrap up the week. Brian, I appreciate the input this morning. I will talk with you again here real soon, and you have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Out there. Yes, thank you very much. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions.